Right, welcome back, everybody. And it's good to see that Jim got there in the front seat. That really has surprised us all. So, Ray was second. Michael Hudson was third. He says, interesting to see the Ford Edsel still running. Didn't know there were any outside museums. Picture of two red cars. It's the one on the left. Yep. Edsel was Henry Ford's son. Thank you very much for that, Michael. Who else? Doreen's come back in, and Jill's back in. Ray, Michael, they're a bit like Trigger's broom, hardly an original parts. Well, yeah, possibly so. Peter's back with us. Peter's just saying that I'm back. Caroline stirred up some wonderful memories of Austria and the area around Wolfgensee. Tony's back. Doreen's just hoping that Caroline comes back. Let's put it this way, Doreen. We're all hoping that Caroline comes back. I know she's there, so we've had a chat. So she's definitely going to give you a good second half. So just for Caroline's information, we were up to 25 in the first half. The numbers are building up again now, so we've got 3 more minutes before we get going. I hope you've all replenished your glasses, cups, mugs, etc. Who else has popped in? Caroline and Dave, good evening to you both. Hope you're both keeping well. Caroline, we could do with a little bit of help on the website there. There's 1 or 2 insects that you may be able to tell us what they are. So if you could have a look at the reference page, and you'll possibly be able to tell Bob what they are exactly and help someone out. Michael's back, Michael Hughes. Richard. Graham H is back. He's saying sorry because he's usually up the front row, but he must have had more little jobs to do at this break than usual. So I must admit, I've been in the house and replenished the glass. In fact, I've replenished it with a little bit of different, something different to the water. I had to smile actually because I'm just getting a drink, and our dog's so funny. She, when she sees you getting a drink, she has to go and get a drink as well. So if the kettle goes on, she has to go and get a drink. So it's always makes us smile to see her do that. So Sue's back. Welcome, Sue. We've just got a minute to go. We're up to 18, but I'll just give it that minute for people to come back. Thank you, Caroline. I just see that you've put, I'll have a look at the reference section, but not brilliant at insects. Any help, you might know something, that would be appreciated. So do remember that for those people listening, when you do send images in for the reference section, do try your best to have a look on the internet, have a look on various places, see if you can identify the insects yourself. That's half of taking the photographs, to not only just take it and say, oh, this is a stripy red beetle, but try and get its name, and that all helps you for next time. So hi Mark. Mark's just popped in again, so that's very good. Right, we're up to 1:15 now, so we'll get going again. So I've got my drink and I'm treated myself tonight. I've got a few roasted peanuts. I've put them on the table. I've taken them out of the bag so I can sit here nibbling nuts whilst Caroline gives us the rest of her talk. So without further ado, thank you very much for the first half, Caroline. Everybody's very appreciative in the comments, and I'll hand it back to you. Thank you, Caroline.
Thanks, Graham. Okay, thanks for coming back for part 2. So we'll get straight on, because I realise I've got quite a lot of pictures, even though I haven't got quite as many as Ray last week. I need to move myself a little bit quicker. So we're going to leave Cuba and we're going to stay a bit closer to home and the Mediterranean with the Greek islands. Now, my first holiday without my parents was 18 with Christine, my good friend. I had my passport, my aunt bought me my new suitcase, and I had the entire range from the Grattan catalogue, for those old enough to remember that. That was also the year I learned that you don't need to take everything from the Grattan catalogue with you. And you have to bear in mind that you've got to be able to lift your suitcase when packed coming home. So I'm moving on to the Greek islands, and my first stop is Rhodes. Now, Rhodes is one of the largest of the islands. It's famous for the Colossus on the harbour, which these windmills were stood there. This was taken in 1986, this picture. So again, it's a film one, so you have to excuse the dots and bits on it. But yeah, this was quite famous in Rhodes. Now, it's a World Heritage Site today, Rhodes, and if you can get a chance to go to one of the Greek islands, the old town, again, it's all traditional, is the place to go. It has quaint streets, nice little bars, really nice place. So as you can see, narrow streets, very, very close together. And this is the days where it used to be the drachma and not the euro. So you used to go to Greece, it was very, very cheap. Again, this is another one of the film ones. It's not quite as good quality, but this is my Olympus trip, 35mm, my present from my mum and dad. And I've still got this camera, one of those that you're not going to throw away. As you can tell from the cars in the picture, it is going back a few years, so 30-something years. So we'll move on from that one. Now, if you go down to Rhodes, the best place to visit is Lindos, which is further down the island. You've got some big resorts on Rhodes. You've got Faliraki, which is, I believe, club capital now. It's one of the places that everyone goes for drinking. When Chris and I first went, it was just a street with tumbleweeds. There was absolutely nothing there. So we made our way to Lindos, and in Lindos you've got whitewashed buildings and you've got the Acropolis at the top. So this is a picture of, well, it's two pictures here I put together. The picture on the left is a film picture of, this was the shoe shop just outside our room, because we didn't have a hotel in those days. We had a room that didn't even lock. So we shared the bathroom with several other rooms, and we had our own room, and this was quite close by. So when I went back in 2010, I was intrigued to see if it was still there, and he's gone more into handbags now, but yes, he's still there, and it's still a thriving little business by the looks of it. Now again, this is my window fascination. I love the windows, I love the way things creep up them, just the shutters, just a window picture. Again, with Greece, everything seems crammed in. So you've got windows, you've got doors, you've got tablecloths and tables outside, half-dead plants, but it just looks the part. It's just exactly what you're going to see. And usually there's a load of cats hanging around, so you'll always see me looking for cats in Greece. When you get to the top of the Acropolis, which is no mean feat, it's good to walk. I remember when Christine and I first went, we thought we'd go by donkey, which was all very well, but I was given a donkey with its reins and slapped on its backside, and it got moving, and it walked right close to the edge of the mountainside, where Chris's was really careful and behaved. So I swore I'd never go on another donkey again, and I walked down. But the second time I went, we walked to the top, and between buying a bottle of water at the bottom and getting to the top of the steps, the water was warm. So it just tells you how hot it was there. But this is St. Paul's Bay, which you can see from the Acropolis. Quite a nice, quiet little bay. So we're moving off Rhodes. I'll do it quite quickly this time for you. This is a small island called Symi. Now again, this is a film picture. Symi's quite a quaint town. Harbour side, they use they do fishing there. What they used to be famous for was the natural sponges that they fished out of the sea. Gradually, they don't have as many now, but again, it's a nice little island to visit. We went back in '86 where it wasn't very busy, not very commercial, so you didn't see too many tourists, which is always nice. I'd much rather be somewhere where it's not as busy. So Greece conjures up buildings with blue domes and churches, and that just takes you to Santorini. Santorini is spectacular. It's a crescent-shaped island, which was the consequence of an activity of the volcano in prehistoric times. So that's why the buildings are so high up, because half of the island just disappeared. And the buildings are literally built into the mountainside and built high. So that was taken from the sea. I managed to get a really good shot, and that snaking path all the way up is steps and pathway, which you can walk up or you can get a donkey. We got a taxi up and then walked back down because that was safer. But it's a really lovely, lovely place to visit. I don't think I'd want to spend a week there. I just really enjoyed just seeing what it was all about. Nice, quiet restaurants. And as you can see from this picture, you've got walls, doors built into the side of the walls. So they've utilised everything. So they've drilled into walls, made buildings out of the walls, and the cliffside. It's quite a fascinating thing to see. I wouldn't fancy living on the cliffside, but it is very, very pretty. Best thing about being in the Med, you can eat outside, and bread ovens are pretty much everywhere. So good stack of wood in there, pizza ready to cook. And I think most of the houses had these, really, pretty much everyone on the top of Santorini. This is one of the pictures that I entered for a competition a few months back. I love windows and doors, like I've mentioned before, but I just love the colour, the blue against the sky, the whitewash buildings, the pink flowers, the greenery, and just the simplicity of the cafe. No tablecloths, just basic place to be. So, apologies for the not so great quality of this. This was taken quite late at night and I didn't have the right camera to hand. We're now on Mykonos, which is an island I always wanted to visit because I loved the film Shirley Valentine. I'm sure some of you may remember that one. I always wanted to have that romantic drink and meal on the beach, which, as you can see, there's absolutely nowhere to have a romantic meal or a drink on that beach. So while we didn't go there, we just had a walk round. We had a meal in the town, but I was waiting for sunset. And if you look in the background, the ship that's sitting outside, that was what our transport was. It was ironically called Costa Fortuna, which by the end of the trip, it certainly did. So just outside of the town of Mykonos, yeah, you've got tea drying out on the boat. I'm not a big fan of calamari, but Mark certainly likes it. But yeah, that was everywhere. They'd hang them literally any place they could to dry them. Put me off my dinner, I can tell you. So this is really what I came for. I wanted to take pictures of the windmills at sunset, and I sat and waited while everyone went to the restaurant, and the group we were with, I just pottered around waiting for the sunset, and I was glad I did. The windmills are beautiful. Trying my best not to get the cars below, so it's not quite as perfect as I'd have liked, but again, I said these aren't competition standard, but they're happy memory ones, and I really, it brings back memories of Mykonos and the sunset. So after that sunset, once the sun had set, I waited just a little bit longer to watch the sun go down behind the harbour, and it really was quite pretty. So we're moving on to another island now. I've been a couple of times to Crete. It's one of the largest of the Greek islands. Sadly, the first time I went, we went to stay in a place called Malia. At that time, I didn't realise that it was party town, and when I got there, I was quaking because it was all night long. It only got quiet at 6 a.m. in the morning, and luckily we were just far enough out of the town not to have too much of an effect on it. But I wouldn't stay at Malia again. Not for me. I'm too old for that now. So it's got some nice views, nice beaches. Not too many sandy beaches, but there are some picturesque. That's a bit of a sandy beach that close to where we stayed. In fact, I think I took that from my sun lounger. So quite literally across the road was the beach. So moving around Crete, there's a little island just off of Crete called Spinalonga, and this is the old leper colony. Its last inhabitant was a priest who left in 1962, and now the island has just remained empty. And going up the mountain, you can see another good view of the island. So we moved further around the island. We were driving up to the Samaria Gorge in the national park. It's been a national park since 1962. It's a fabulous place. Crete is such a big island. You do need a few hours to drive it, and we drove up through these mountains, and the views are pretty spectacular. You don't realise that such a hot island can be quite so green. And just another view from the pretty top of the mountain we're climbing up. And a few hairpin bends. And believe me, by the time I got to the top, I really needed some fresh air to water because I really didn't travel too well. They were quite scary roads, but it's worth the drive. Spectacular when you get there. So just across from the top of the gorge, along the coastline, it's quite rugged. Some of it's quite arid, but there is a lot of greenery on Crete. So moving up to Hamia, which is the Venice of Crete. It's the second largest city on north of the island. It's a bit of a drive, like I say, 2 or 3 hours. It's lovely. You've got nice streets, restaurants, bars, and you've got the harbour. And sitting on the harbour, you'll have horses with carriages and a parasol. So it's kind of a quirky drive round. And this is known as the Little Venice. Many of the properties are very Venetian style. There's quite a lot of influence in Greece from the other close relations, Italy and such like. So you do see quite a lot of it in the buildings. So Hamia was quite a nice place. And again, doors and just little sideways that you wouldn't think anyone was. More shops. I'm not really a keen shopper when I go on holiday, if I'm honest, which may surprise many people, including my husband. But I do like the buildings. So I like to walk around the shops just for the buildings. And that was probably this picture, which is the sunset over Malia, which is probably the best bit of Malia that I found. Not saying it's not a nice area, fantastic beach, but just a little bit too busy for us. So we're going back onto the mainland of Europe, and we're going to visit Croatia. Stopped here for a little while and was quite surprised how clean and immaculate it was. In 1991, after the breakup of Yugoslavia, as we all knew it, I grew up with Yugoslavia, and it had its troubles. They've had a good restoration and tidy up of the town, so to speak, of Dubrovnik, and it's really quite a pretty, clean town to visit. You've still got evidence of old buildings. Again, another nice picture to take, buildings. You've got some with bullet holes in, some are still damaged, some are not used, some with missing roofs, but it all adds to it. But the general feel of Dubrovnik is quite a clean town. And I just love the colours, the uniform of the orange roofs with the greenery on the mountainsides. And it's quite a lush area, very, very green. So taken further up the mountain, you can just see all of Dubrovnik and just the starting of the harbour. And you wouldn't think of all the troubles it had. It's really come a long way, and putting money back into it has certainly brought tourism back for them. So that's the harbour. You come in. We came in by boat and walked through the town. It's just it amazes me every time I go abroad to these places how clean they are compared to some towns in our country. Another side road with a nice green door, which I spotted, a bit of greenery, someone hanging the washing out. It just gives you a feel of their life in the Med and what a laid-back life they have compared to us, really. Another street, I'm not sure I'd want my washing hanging out, but I guess if you're built up and you've got nowhere to put it, then you've got to do it. So, but again, if you look at how clean the streets are, it's immaculate. This is in the Franciscan church and monastery. We had a wander through here. Very clean, not so much used these days. They still use it as a church. There's a library around here, but it was primarily a monastery. As you can see on the rooftops, roof repairs going on, the monks that surround it, which are quite nice. Nice detail on them. This was just a door frame that I spotted. I like the way the greenery fell through. Just another different take on a window for me. And that's finally the picture of Dubrovnik from the very top of the mountainside. You can drive up in a coach or a taxi, and you've got quite a lot of places you can walk, and it's really quite a refreshing place. Somewhere I'd like to go back to again. I've not heard anyone say bad of Dubrovnik. Okay, so that ends Dubrovnik for you and Croatia. So I'm going to take you a bit further afield now to the Indian Ocean. And this is, I hope, is not my once-in-a-lifetime trip, because it's somewhere I'd love to go back to again. It's the Maldives. Now, there are around 1,200 islands in the Indian Ocean, and about 800 are uninhabited. So when you have a look at these pictures coming up, you'll see most of the islands are about 1.5 meters above sea level. So they're not going to hang around for long. So we landed in Mali and got a air taxi. We had a choice of air taxi or speedboat. So I thought, oh, it's got to be safer on a plane. Well, yeah, it was kind of. It was quite rickety and bouncy, but nonetheless, it gave you a fantastic view of the islands. And as you can see, as we flew over them, these pictures were taken from the plane. And I think I had my Canon 450D for this, or 400D, sorry. So it got some quite good pictures through the window and through the movement of the plane, just of the islands dotted about. So now we're coming into land. This island in front is the island where we stayed. And you don't realise when you're actually on that island, you can see other islands around, but you just don't realise how many and how close they all are. So I've zoomed in a bit on this one. Now you'll see the beach bungalows on the right, which are rather lovely. I didn't stay in one of those. We stayed to the top left, where you can see a little lagoon of water. And if you just see where that water is, that was just outside my beach bungalow. So I might not have been in a bungalow on the water, but we had water right outside. So there was absolutely no problem with that. And it was a gorgeous little island, really beautiful. As you can see, the sea is an amazing colour. So that's the view from my bungalow, from my doorway. We had this little lagoon. Now it filled up when the tide came in, and it drained away when the tide went out. But when it filled up coming in, it would bring in little stingrays, probably the size of a dinner plate, and you'd have those swimming around with you. So it was kind of nice. They were okay. They were harmless, but it was really an idyllic beach. Okay, so around the island, you've got plenty of green plantation. You've got lots of coconut trees. And the guy, you probably can't see him on this picture, but there's a guy at the top. He just climbed up, hands and feet bare, all the way to the top, and he was passing these coconuts down on a rope. So there, he's right up there with the coconuts. Good zoom on that camera. So I think it was a Sigma lens on that. Unfortunately, he did let some drop. So again, you had to be a bit careful where you stood or where you walked. And I think they did have little signs out saying beware. So you wouldn't want them landing on you. Now, there's lots of greenery. Like I say, I'm amazed at the roots of these trees, because you wouldn't think anything could grow on sand. Obviously, you've got water around you, but it's quite amazing how these things adapt and how they grow. And that's all, they just spring out from the sand. I think Bob will probably know what this is. I have no idea. It's just some sort of, Graham, help me out. What are these?
Lizard.
It's some sort, that's it, it's some sort of lizard anyway. But they were everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Now, I'm not squeamish. You put a spider near me and I'll run a mile. But anything like this with snakes, lizards, I'm quite happy. So we had lots of those around the island. We also had fruit bats, which were huge. I was expecting a little bat, but no, these are again quite sizable creatures, and they just hung around outside the restaurant. Quite literally, I was sat having my tea, and he was just hanging there in the tree. Quite cute. There was so many of them. I'm not really fazed by things like that, but yeah, there was a lot of fruit bats around. And again, another picture of a lizard. I kind of like this one. I think I actually got all the settings just right. So, and he stayed still long enough for me to capture him. Now, there isn't a lot to do on the island, I will give you that. You can walk the island in half an hour max. That's all the way around. You go around it, you can go across it. It doesn't take you long at all. And despite the island being busy or full, you didn't see many people. We were really lucky. We went in August, so it's kind of stormy season, and we had a couple of storms, but you didn't really see many people, and it was so hot. But the beaches are just like they look in the brochures. They're white, amazingly blue sea. There's a bit of a better picture, just a cafe bar, sat on the sand, out overlooking the sea. This is again outside of our bungalow. As you can see, we were having a storm coming over. I was sat on my sun lounger reading a book, and I did get some big splots of rain, but I just carried on reading, and it's just pointless. I was already wet from being in the sea. I didn't see the point in going in, and it did just blow past. The wall outside, because of the low level, they've made these out of sandbag type walls, and they're covered. I don't know if they concrete them, but they're certainly given a covering. And it certainly protects the island, because without these, the tide would come in and you'd lose your bungalow. So you can see why they're quite fragile islands. Just another view of more plantation, just popping up everywhere. Just greenery, very green, lush island. Those are the beach bungalows that you can only dream to stay in. But to be honest, I wasn't that fussed. I thought it'd be nice to stay in one of those. But when you're on the beach and you've got nobody around you, what does it matter? You've got water. So I was quite happy with that. And that's just the walk back to our bungalow. You can see on the left there's a beach bungalow's roof popping out. They weren't everywhere. You could see them, but they weren't in your face kind of bungalows. You felt quite comfortably alone on the island. It was really quite nice and tranquil. A lot of the time we spent snorkeling. I'm afraid I'm way ahead of everyone, because I used to do selfies under the water. Hubby and I used to do selfies under the water with the water camera. Not a flattering picture, so we'll move on quickly. But yeah, I'm ahead of these teenagers nowadays. So the water camera I had was just a cheapie. I think I paid £50 for it, in a plastic casing, and I spent the whole of the time snorkeling. The water, as you can see, this is under, very clear, clean water. The sand was white. And although they're not the best quality pictures, you did have quite a lot of sea life fishes and such like. And for a £50 camera, I think it took some reasonable pictures. And these were just everywhere. They didn't bother you. They weren't bothered by you being around, and they just swam alongside you. So, like I say, they're not the best quality, but I'm not really into deep sea diving pictures. Okay, so leaving the Maldives behind, we'll go to my very favourite place for a short break, and that is Venice. Now, I'm sure many people have been to Venice. If you haven't, it's one of those places you've got to go in your lifetime. I've been lucky enough to go, I think I've been 4 times now. Love it for a break. Back in 2014, we went for Carnival in February. We went armed with wellies because we were expecting Acqua Alto, which is where the tide rise is high and it goes into St Mark's Square. We were lucky. The weather was like this all the time. Fantastic weather. And that's all the gondolas. They're everywhere. That's the Grand Canal. So you've got boats travelling up and down, gondolas. Quite choppy, very busy part. And then you get quiet parts where you've got gondolas parked up, and the water really is that colour. It's not a dirty colour. It's kind of a green colour, and it's not as bad as people make out. The smell, you do get a bit of a waft sometime in the summer, but most of the time it's fine, and it's a lovely place to visit. So in St Mark's Square, you've got the Campanile, which you can climb up. I think you go by lift, if I remember rightly. Now it's been a while. So if you go up there, you get a fantastic view over Venice, St Mark's Square, the gondolas on the Grand Canal, as you can see. So you realise how tightly packed together Venice is, but amongst all of those houses, you've got rows and rows of canals, you've got bridges. There's 177 canals in Venice alone, so it's really tightly packed. And that's the view of St Mark's Square. Now, as I said, we went at Carnival time, and they had this stage, so everybody that dresses up for Carnival get paraded around their competition and such like. So there's always something going on. If you don't like crowds, this isn't the time to go, though. It does get very busy. So this is one of the models. There's lots of them everywhere. People love dressing up at Carnival. They just come out everywhere. The more outrageous, the better. There's some pretty, there's some strange, very peculiar, but certainly worth a look. Now these two, the one on the left is Cindy and the one on the right is Sherry. They're friends I made who've come over from Nevada. They travelled over for the Carnival. They go every year. They make their own costumes. Cindy made her own. Well, I think both of them made their own costumes. How much it cost to ship, I have no idea. But yeah, they bring them over. They stay in an apartment. And attention to detail is brilliant, because Cindy, who's very spidery there, even decides to wear spider contact lenses. So everything on her outfit is made by her and brought over. So they do well to travel that far with it. So outside all the cafes in St Mark's, you have people having a rest from masquerading around. Basically, they just love getting dressed up. They love having their pictures taken. They're everywhere. You give them an email, or they'll give you their email, and you just send them a picture. It's a really nice atmosphere. Quirky. I don't know who they came up with a cat in a fancy outfit, but I don't know if it's a cat actually. It looks like a rabbit. These were down by the gondolas on the seafront, on the water side. Spectacular, and they stand for hours in these costumes. They'll pose for you. Everyone's out with the camera. You have to battle your way through the people with the iPads, and I saw somebody even with a laptop camera trying to take pictures, which was kind of frustrating, but hey, if it gets the picture. Even the children dress up, which is quite cute. They look so grown up, but everybody gets into it. Everyone gets involved with this carnival. These two were really scary. She is very scary in particular, down to her contact lenses, I think, that kind of looked odd. And they sat posing for hours. I was watching them while we were queuing for something, and they just sat there and posed for people. Fantastic. The traditional gondolier, you can even buy an outfit if you were so minded to do so there. They're everywhere. They used to be quite expensive. It's not the cheapest thing to have a gondola ride. I think they now have set a price at €80, I think, for half an hour, which is not cheap. But if you go to Venice, you're going to go in a gondola, aren't you? So they have regulated the costings there. More derelict buildings, some concrete streets. Not every street has water, but you'll go over quite a few bridges to find these streets. Just another bridge. I like the bridge, the reflections, the water. It's amazing that the buildings are still standing. You think these were quite deep, but I think they're only about not even a metre deep, some of these canals, so they're not as deep as you'd expect them to be. Busy. Just stood in the Basilica. I was just stood trying to get a bit of shade because it was quite a warm day, even though it was February, and it was just busy, full on busy. As you can see there, looking at the Bridge of Sighs, people queued and just stood on the bridges looking at pictures of it. This is the Rialto Bridge. Now, it looks completely different from the front version that you normally see. This is actually the middle of the Rialto Bridge. Either side, you can look at the water, but up the middle, you've got rows of shops and steps and people, and it is packed. It's always packed. Certainly Carnival time, if you're going for Carnival, be prepared to go one way because there's no way you can turn around and go another way. It's just, you just don't go with the flow. And then you go to the extreme opposites where you've got nice quiet little streets, water streets with gondolas parked up. Again, I thought this would be quite a good picture to show. This was sort of tea time, 5-ish, and you can see how busy it is for Carnival. You can see some of the models out there, people just waiting. Sunset's obviously a good time to take pictures, but everybody's there, everybody. Just a bit of a queue of gondolas that just float past the restaurants, which are nice to sit out. Best places to go are where the locals go. Always eat away from St Mark's Square. Eat down a side street. Don't go to the big places because they charge the earth. A few gondolas there. I'm not surprised they don't bump into each other more often. They're just all over. This seems to be a bit of a bottleneck for gondolas down this side. So there's also Murano and Burano, which are close to Venice itself. Murano is famous for the glass, which you'll get chandeliers, glass, everything, such like. And then Burano is a little bit further on and a lot quieter. It does get a few tourists, but not quite as many. But the colours and the houses are so lovely. Just more windows and doors. It amazes me that they have doors opening out onto the water. I don't think I'd dare trust myself. I'd forget. And another view of St Mark's Square for Carnival. Absolutely packed. It's nice to see the Carnival, but it is also nice to go back at another time. I've been in August and June, both good times, not overly busy. One of my favourite pictures, I've entered this for competitions and I'm really annoyed with myself because I chopped the bit off the top of the bridge, but I still like it. I like the reflections, I like the buildings in the water. It's just peaceful Venice when you come out of all that crowd. Another one of Burano. Just little waterways, very, very quiet, much nicer to walk around. and the gondolas will take you anywhere. They'll take you, they'll take you down the narrow canals. If you're lucky, you'll get a singing gondolier, and they are amazing because the acoustics, with the buildings being so tall, the acoustics echo, and you can hear them for quite a way. So you're trying to work out which canal they're coming down and whereabouts they are, and they're really lovely. And that's just another canal coming off the Grand Canal. The Grand Canal gets very, very busy because you have the water buses, which are the vaporettos. You have speedboats. You can't speed on the water though, because we did actually see somebody get pulled over by the speed police in another motorboat. So you can't speed in Venice at all. Just some windows, more windows and shutters and plants. This is the Bovolo staircase, lovely building. It's been restored. Just briefly, we did a murder mystery evening around Venice, and he stopped by this place, and apparently the owner had the staircase made so it was a spiral staircase so that he could ride his horse up to bed. He didn't want to actually walk all the stairs up, so that was the story behind the spiral staircase. And one of the gondolas at sunset. Pretty much, everybody has a sunset picture of gondolas. I'm not going to be unique in that one. Okay, so we leave Venice behind and we head to Paris. Now, I've always wanted to go to Paris. Never been. It's supposed to be the most romantic city, but I actually think Venice is. We went for a weekend in November. We went to see Andre Rieu in concert. And we did quite a lot of walking in the first couple of days. We visited Notre Dame, just a standard picture of Notre Dame, but this is the most fantastic place to go to people watch. Now I've got a few pictures on here, and I don't suppose they'll see them, but people were feeding the pigeons, a bit like it used to be in Venice. But just people's expressions, we sat on a wall for ages, and I just took pictures of people watching. This chap, I don't think he really wanted it to be preened by the pigeon, but nonetheless, he stood there for quite some time with him. And this one, I just love this picture. I just think it's really nice. Everyone was doing selfies. There were some girls, young girls, modelling, doing their poses and pouts like they do. This couple just looked really nice. Now you know the building, standard pictured. Normally everyone takes a picture of the Eiffel Tower, but I was stood at the bottom. We were waiting to go up, and I just like the structure. It's an amazing structure. We went up in the lift, which is quite hairy. It does go up quite quickly, and you can actually feel the movement of the structure. But it's the Eiffel Tower, so everybody has to go up the Eiffel Tower. Sadly, when we were in Paris, we visited the Eiffel Tower, and then we walked around towards the Louvre. We decided we'd go and see the Mona Lisa, which unfortunately I thought was very overrated. It was very small. We were planning on heading out after the Louvre to go and get something to eat, but we'd had the biggest cake in the Louvre that I'd ever had, and I didn't feel like eating a meal. So rather than walk on, we thought, we'll head up towards the Champs-Élysées, and we'll pick something up to eat there rather than turning off right to go to the restaurants. We didn't know at this time what was happening. As we continued up, we had a quick bite to eat. We got back to our hotel to find family trying to contact us, the tour people trying to contact us, because it was actually the night of the Bataclan attacks, and we'd actually been in that area. And had we have gone on to a restaurant, we'd have been right in the centre of it. But luckily, we decided, cake was enough, and we walked back. It was kind of surreal because the next day, although we had the option to go home, we decided we'd stay. We were in the safest place we could be. There were armed police, armed guards everywhere. We went up to Montmartre, and it was quite a surreal area because it was very quiet. Although some bars were open, some were closed. It was a very changed atmosphere from the day before. it was completely different to that laughing couple outside the Notre Dame, to this somber feeling. Even the artist wasn't really enthused, but I did like this picture of him as he walked up the street with a picture of somebody. You'd like to wonder who. And we stayed at up at Montmartre, but it was definitely a different atmosphere. People weren't doing selfies. People weren't laughing and joking. It was quite a shame, but strange time. The Arc de Triomphe, which is your usual picture, I took it on Zoom. There's no way I would like to drive around that in a car. I have enough trouble getting around Lincoln, so there's no way I'd manage that. And finally, a picture of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Because of the attacks, it was kept in darkness. It was armed guards. It's not a great quality picture. I think I took it with my phone, this one, but it reflected the mood around the city. I think everyone was respectful of the quiet. Right, so we finished Paris and France. I'm just going to go to Malta briefly. I won't take too long. I'm sorry if we're going on too much, Graham. We've been to Malta several times. It's a fantastic place to be. Valletta is the capital. It's withstood quite a lot. In World War II, it went through quite a lot of trauma, and there's still bullet holes in walls. They were very well attacked in those days, but they've built it up. They've repaired it. It's a very, very busy tourist island. It's the Marmite Island, I believe, as Mark says. You either love it or you hate it. You don't get many sandy beaches, so you've got to find a hotel with a pool. The streets in Valletta, again, windows again, people. I love the windows. They're the same everywhere. They seem to, even new buildings seem to be modelled in the old style windows. So it's very in keeping. And even a co-op, which I was surprised to see. But then I guess, there's a lot of English influence as well in there. And they drive on the right side of the road for us. Just more street scenes of Valletta, very hilly. A lot of walking, not to walk on a hot day. Really don't want to do that. Just some windows and balconies for you. This chap, well, I don't know what they were doing. They were marching up the town. He must have been baking in his outfit, but they came right up the town and he was smiling at me. And they stopped once they finished the tune. And I just love the expression on his face. And that he just, I don't know what he finds funny, but I just love him laughing. Another people watching picture. And just on the street with new windows, as you can see, keeping in with the old. So we walked through Sliema. This was quite a strange day because it was very sunny, and then we saw this big black cloud coming along, and the weather changed instantly. It was October. The weather changed really quickly, and we looked out to sea, and there were three whirlwinds coming across the sea, and we thought, oh, we're going to have to get somewhere safe and sheltered. So before we had a chance to do that, we ended up sheltering under a newspaper stand before that disappeared down the road and the rain started. So we ran across the road, by which time it was pouring. It was ankle deep on the main road with water. And we sheltered in a doorway, and I just managed to get a really good picture of the lightning. Not best quality because I didn't have my DSLR, I just had my small camera, but great shot. A fantastic storm. So in the centre of Malta, you've got Mdina, which is also known as the Silent City. It used to be the capital in the medieval times, but now it's just a small town, walled city, narrow streets. Again, doors and windows, balconies. All the streets were very quiet. You do get a few cars in there, but only certain times, and pedestrian residents only, not tourists. So you're not overrun with cars. Just some more narrow streets. And that's the view from Mdina, which is, you can see the whole of the island. So that shows you how small Malta actually is. You can see across the island. And there's another view of the island for you. You can just see from one side to the other. Just a window shot for you. Metal railings. It's one of my things, windows, so I apologise for these. Moving on from Mdina, we go to the Red Tower, named because it's red, also called St Agatha's. You can see Gozo from here. There's quite a lot of history about the tower, which I won't go into tonight, but it's worth a drive up to because you get a fantastic view and a feel for it. That's the view from the tower. Just again, you can see all the coastline. It's a very rugged island. And that's Gozo. That's a panoramic of Gozo. A lot of people go here. It used to be the Azure window, which used to stand there. It was like a doorway. But in the storms, it got damaged quite badly and it just collapsed into the sea. And that is where the Azure window used to stand. So, but it's amazing how many people go to see where it used to stand. So, quickly moving on to a little village called Marterschlock. It's on the southern side of the island, and it's a little fishing village. Sunday mornings they have markets. It's traditional kind of market. You've got food, you've got spices, you've got meats, fish, etc. As well as the usual touristy things. Always worth a visit though. We visited on the morning and then we went back in the evening because you get a lovely sunset and all the market disappears. The restaurants come out onto the pavements and you can have your evening meal. So, but these boats are so colourful. They're really, really pretty boats, and you see them working on them quite a lot. And there's a bit of swordfish. You don't get fresher than that. I've converted this to black and white because it had a red cover on the market, and it made everything look red, so it looked better in black and white. And we did go back that evening for our swordfish dinner, and it was superb. Can't beat fresh fish. And before we finish, we go to a place called Sweethaven. It's a really quirky place. It's also called Popeye Village, as you can obviously tell. It was built in 1981. They dug it into the rocks on the cliffside. It was the setting for a film Robin Williams made. In fact, it was his first film made in 1981. Not the best film he ever made, but they kept the set, they kept the houses, they keep on top of it, keep cleaning it, keep it looking good, and it's now a tourist attraction. You can see how quirky the buildings are. That was taken from the top of a roof. I'm not sure why I felt the need to climb the ladder to the top of the roof, probably to get the picture, but I wasn't that keen on coming down. So yeah, it's a really quirky little place and quite a fun place to visit. As you can see, there's a bit of good buildings in there. And they're actually meant to look like this. They're not rack and ruin. They were actually meant to look like this when they did the film. And just another view of the town a bit. And they're all life-size houses. Inside you've got all the memorabilia. You've got a theatre which plays you a bit of the film. It's quite quirky. And you've got the characters, of course, as well, that just make it a little bit more real for you. So leaving Sweethaven, finally we're now in Moster, which has Moster Dome, which is on the centre of the island, and it's a stunning cathedral, this. That's the exterior. I'll move into the interior for you. So it's highly decorated, beautiful inside. I did have knee-length shorts on, but she thought I was showing too much knee, so she gave me a skirt to wear as well. So yeah, you have to be very respectful in these places. I did have a shawl to wrap around. That's the dome, that's the ceiling of the cathedral, and sitting back and just looking at it, it almost moves. It's a stunning, stunning ceiling. But the history of Moster Dome is during World War II, a group of about 300 worshippers were gathered in the church for the evening when during the evening a 500 kilogram, which is 1,100 pounds, German bomb pierced through the ceiling, smashed into the ground, sailed down the aisle and came to a stance at the altar. And they called it a miracle because nobody was killed, nobody died, it didn't explode. And they felt that was an intervention from God. And they actually have a replica of this now in a case. And that shows you what came through and how much damage that could have done. And yeah, they were very blessed that day. So that really concludes my talk tonight. I know I've rushed through the last bit a bit quickly. Hope you've enjoyed it. It's only a few of the places I've been. I've been to so many. I'm really lucky. I work hard and I like to travel, so long may that continue. And well, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Caroline. If you stop sharing your screen now, and I will just say on behalf of everybody, an absolute great thank you for sharing with us your images from your holidays. And we've seen more countries today than I've been to, so thank you very much indeed from everybody. And we shall all say a hearty good night to you, and thank you very much from all the members of the club for your talk. It's been very inspirational, and I've been to Venice twice, but you said something that I never did.
Good.
I went twice, but I've never been on a gondola.
You have to. When we went on the gondola for carnival time, it was the only time we could get sat down was get a gondola, and it cost us €125 for an hour.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's why I didn't go on it. Too much money. Right. A big thank you from everybody, and we'll end this evening saying thank you to everybody for watching this evening. Thank you for sticking with us. We're a little bit late, but that doesn't matter. Oh, there's Mark just gone past in the background.
Yes, he's just walked past.
So thanks very much, Caroline. Thanks everybody for watching, and we shall see you all shortly. Good evening, Mark. He just waved.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good night, everybody.
Yes. Thank you.